Welcome to today's podcast. My name is Pearlie Brewer, and I will be your host. Today I have a very special guest, Rayma Martin. In 2019, Rayma lost her husband Jimmy in a workplace accident. Rayma has agreed to share her story with us today. Such a story is never easy to tell, but it is critically important that everyone understands that workplace accidents can and do happen in the blink of an eye, and then everything in life changes. Also, workplace accidents do not just affect the person who is injured or killed. They affect everyone who is part of their life. Family, friends, co-workers. Everyone's life changes. Welcome, Rayma. Again, thank you for agreeing to be on a podcast today.
You're welcome.
Rayma, let's start with some happier times. Tell us about how you and Jimmy met.
Well, that was very long time ago. I was a neighbor that lived up the road and just a short ways. And he was having some problem. They had just purchased a new house, which we had bought through New Brunswick Housing, myself and another lady, and then she sold hers. So we were both built and put on this site by by a construction that had the business, whatever. And so our houses were alike, and actually we had both chosen the same floor plan. So anyway, in long story short, I was having some problems. Some people had come in and cut some of the woods, and in doing so, they had run their skidder over my drain field. So I was having problems with the drainage of the sewer, and Jim was having an issue himself down here. My place was 2 acres where his was only a lot under the old law before they had to survey and make it an acre. So anyhow, I run into Jimmy at the Texaco. It used to be a Texaco restaurant on the Trans-Canada, right out Texaco. And I was there for lunch, and I recognized him as being the neighbor down the road, and that he was the one that had bought the house, and what were they doing in the backyard. So I went up and asked him as he was getting ready to leave. And he told me then that they were having problems with the sewer drainage, and he was building a crib. So I asked him if he would build me one when he got done, if he'd come up and look at mine, and would he build me a crib as well, and then I would pay him for his work. So that was our first initial meeting. And then later, his family and I became friends, and as years passed, then his marriage broke up and things changed, and then a year or so later, he asked me out, and I went.
Oh,
I had been married before, and I had been alone for 10 years. I had 2 boys, and I had lost 1 son, but my first husband, left me as a widow also. And so I had 10 years of living alone. And I was quite independent, but there was some things I just couldn't do.
So what was it like raising your family? I'm sure you had some good times. You had some tough times.
Yes, we certainly did. Jim had 4 children, ages 3 to 9. And I had 2, 14 to 16. I had 2 boys. He had 2 girls and 2 boys. So
Wow.
Raising our children was very difficult by times. Very difficult, especially Jim's children. Not that they were bad kids. I don't mean that, but they had a hard time dealing with the fact that their mom had left them. Mm-hmm. And so for me to be in the place where their mom should have been, they had a hard time adjusting. Not so much the boys, but the 2 older girls.
Okay.
So it was rough. It was rough. But we managed through it.
So in addition to the obvious sad memories that you have that we'll talk about in a few minutes, tell us about some of the happier times that stand out for you. Special times, special moments, vacations, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Well, we didn't do vacations so much, really. Jim worked through the summer. That was his busy time, spring, summer, and fall. He did vinyl siding and roofing at that time. And, I worked at the bakery Carnes Bakery, and I worked on a night shift. Half nights and half days, and some days through the week was all nights, and so it was fluctuating hours. So we didn't do vacations so much. We did go away on our anniversaries for a couple days, but other than that, we were pretty much local. Jim loved to fish and hunt, so of course we went fishing and hunting and trapped through the woods and scouting out for moose and deer and partridge hunting and all those things. They were the best times, was the partridge hunting. Yeah.
Now let's go back to August 29th, 2019. Did anything stand out for you that day, or was it just like any other day for you?
Well, actually, Pearlie, it was August 28th that the accident happened.
Excuse me.
Jim passed away just a little after midnight, so it put it to 29.
Yeah.
But no, we got up. I packed his bucket. He was right happy going to work. He didn't say goodbye to the dog, which he always said, be home later, Lindor. And usually gave me a kiss before he went out the door, and he didn't do that either. So he just went out, and he was afraid of being late, and Jim always wanted to be a half an hour early. So nothing was any different. It was a normal day.
So how did you find out about your husband's accident?
Actually, I had just got to the job I was doing in the afternoon, and the phone rang, and I seen it was Stephen's phone, which was his supervisor. And of course, Jimmy had a few times lost his phone in the brook, and so, or else he forgot it somewhere. So Stephen's number didn't mean anything. You know, I answered the phone. What'd you do? Lose your phone in the brook again? And it was Stephen, and he just said, no, Rayma, there's been an accident. Jimmy's hurt bad. You need to come to the bridge. Don't go to the hospital, but go to the bridge. So that's where I went. I just left everything and walked out. And
so how far was the bridge from your home?
The bridge is, I was in town, you see. I was in town, so the Hodgson Road is just outside of town. It would be maybe 6 miles, something like that, similar.
Okay.
It's not that far, yeah.
So why did he want you to go to the site rather than to the hospital?
The ambulance wasn't sure if they were going to head to Fredericton or they were going to Waterville, and they were waiting for word to where they were going.
Okay.
So that's why he said come to the bridge, because he knew I'd follow the ambulance.
So what do you remember about that when you got to the bridge?
They had just put him in the ambulance, and Stephen said to me, Rayma, he's talking, so maybe that's a good sign, but he is hurt bad. And the boys were all upset. The crew was terribly upset, and they were just, they were just beside themselves. Jim got along with all his crew, and they all looked up to him, and, they just all worked good together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what followed from there?
From there, the rescue truck was there, and actually the house that I was at working, I had seen the rescue truck go by, and some other memories for my niece came to me at the time, and I thought, oh, how awful to see the truck going and not knowing that it's going for someone for you. So I even forget your question now, Pearlie. I'm sorry.
So what followed from there? Did they end up taking him to?
From there, the rescue truck was there, yes, and it happened to be the gentleman that was on the rescue truck was someone that I worked for. I do house cleaning, and it was someone that I had worked for in their home, so I knew them. So the ambulance pulled out. They weren't being able to get a good signal because they were kind of down in a little hollow, and they pulled out and were going to go just up around the turn and to get a signal. And I said to the gentleman on the rescue, if they're up there, how am I going to know where they're going? And he said they would radio back to tell us, but they didn't radio back. So then my son-in-law arrived because I had phoned him when I was on my way and told him what was going on and asked him to come meet me there because I thought I might meet someone around. And so he said that he had just met the ambulance and it was pulling up around. So it was going to Waterville. So I just jumped right in the car and we went to Waterville right immediately. He stopped by to get his wife, which is Jim's oldest girl, and at the school, and we went straight to the hospital. Yeah.
So what all do you remember about the rest of the day?
Well, it wasn't sinking in how serious the accident was. I guess I didn't realize how serious the accident was. I knew he was hurt. Jim had kind of had an off season. He'd had a heart attack in April, and then he had his hand injured that summer on the job, and he had just got back to work and was so glad to be back to work. So when I got there and they said he was hurt and they were sending him to St. John, and right after that the doctor came in and he said, we need to put him under because he's thrashing around a lot and it's causing more injuries than, it's just causing more to make it worse. So my reaction was, well then, if that's what you need to do, put him under right now. Never dreaming that you weren't never going to talk to him again. So the doctor went right out and my daughter had got there then. And we went in the room with him, but he was unconscious. There was a lot of blood in his hair. And they said they were just waiting to hear from St. John so that they could take him. And the gentleman that came in running that was going to be in the ambulance was also another family that I worked for. So I felt good that people that I knew were looking after him. And Dr. Chator was very, very good. And I trusted him, and he's a very good doctor. So when we left there, we were going to St. John, and St. John was going to fix it. St. John always has been able to fix it. I never realized it. It just wasn't sinking in that it was a lot worse than what I knew. Then when I got to St. John, of course, I come home. They said, don't follow right fair behind the ambulance because by the time they get there and then they get him off the stretcher and in and the doctor looks at him, said, you got a little while. You got a good half hour or so. So I came home. I let all the kids know what was happening that I knew. And I packed him a bag and packed some clothes and got the dog and away we went. I called my sister and one of my sisters came and she followed me down. And we went to St. John. And then when we got there, the doctor came in and said that he had so much brain damage that they could operate, but if they did, they have to take half his brain and he'd be a vegetable the rest of his life. Or we could, just let him be because he only would probably live for about an hour. We had that discussion many times, don't leave me as a vegetable if I'm ever injured in that way. And I felt the same way. And so all the family that were there, that were present, agreed Dad would never want that, Rayma. And I said, yes, I know. And so there is no decision. It's up to God whether he lives or dies. and he died a little after 1 a.m. And most of the family was able to get there by the time that took place. But it seemed like, when I think of it now, it seemed like an awful long time between, getting from the site to the hospital, and then getting from the hospital to St. John. And then, it just seemed like there was so much delay. It makes you wonder, if it had been a little quicker, maybe there wouldn't have been so much damage and they would have been able to save it. You always wonder what if, right? Mm-hmm. So,
how did your family, your children and your grandkids deal with it?
Oh,
must have been terrible.
It's still an ongoing thing. One of our grandchildren, every few weeks, just goes beside herself and has to call her father to come, and she's had a bad day thinking about Papa. But all the kids have dealt differently. Some have handled it in their own way, and then some have not handled it at all very good. And some, they have struggled. They've all struggled very much in dealing with Dad is gone. Even today. It's been 4 years, but even today, it's like hard to come to the house. Too many memories. So I don't see them a lot. They're there, but I don't see them.
Support. Did you have good support at the time or not?
I did from my family, and all the crew. I had support from them. I had from the family. WorkSafe was good. All gyms, the DTI, DTO, whatever they call them, they were all very good. My family, Jim's family, they were amazing. They were amazing.
What was it like for you after the funeral was over and, as they say, everyone had left?
Well, my sister stayed on with me and she helped me with all the paperwork. She worked for H&R for many years, so she had actually gone through a death with her husband as well, so she knew the papers you'd need to fill out, and she helped me with all of that. She was amazing. So without her, I'd probably still be filling them out, but she was very good. She was very good support, and yeah.
So let's skip ahead to the trial, to July 2020. What do you remember about the trial?
The trial to me was a joke, in the fact that here the judge knew that this was redundant. The lawyers knew this was redundant. So why go to the public cost of taxpayers to bring those people in to have to say that it was redundant in front of everyone, outside of the media knowing? To me, it was a waste of money and a waste of time, and it wasn't going to go nowhere. Nobody was going to gain nothing. The government took it out of one pocket and put it in the other pocket. That was as simple as that. And hearing the judge sat up there and he just looked at everyone and he said, "You got to be kidding me. This is redundant. Why are we even here?" And it wasn't the fact that I wasn't getting any money. That had no bearing on it at all. I wasn't even thinking about that part of it. I wasn't looking for that. I just wanted someone to fess up that they had been in the wrong. And it wasn't just DTI. WorkSafe was in the wrong as well. Because they didn't do their job no more than DTI was doing their job.
What do you mean WorkSafe was in the wrong?
Well, WorkSafe, they said that they didn't know the job was even being done down there, that they didn't know it was even being worked on. Well, my husband had an injury on his hand and almost lost 2 fingers. And it was on that job at WorkSafe was paying him for, and he had just got back to work the week before.
Okay.
So what do you mean they didn't know? They knew the job was being done. They knew. They just slip-slop happy. You know, it was just ship shop. People weren't doing their job that they were really supposed to be doing. They were, you know, passing the buck. And DTI probably passed the buck. Papers didn't go in that should have went in. WorkSafe says one thing, and, you know, like it just, to me, it was just pointless. Just pointless. And pardon me.
No, go ahead.
I blame them as much as I do the DTI. And I didn't blame the crew. It was an accident. It was an accident. It wasn't no intentional anything. And that was, you know, that was one thing after Jim's death. The very next morning, I believe it was, that the coroner for New Brunswick called me to come into his office. And the first question that he asked me, was your husband drunk last night? Or was your husband drinking this morning before he went to work? That was the first question out of his mouth, and that really PO'd me. Simple as that. I mean, like I said to him, he had a 6-pack in the basement since Christmas, and this is August. How much do you think he drinks? No, he wasn't drinking last night. Where would you come up with that idea? That's the first question. What a question to ask somebody who just lost her husband.
What else did he ask you?
I really don't remember too much of the other questions.
Yeah.
That I just remember that one because it ticked me off so bad, but I didn't really remember the other questions. He asked me about his health, you know, his mental state, and you know, Jim was happy to go to work. He really liked his crew. He liked working. He liked doing stuff and questions like that.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't really remember.
Now, did WorkSafe provide you with any grief counseling or any counseling of
They
any
did
kind?
offer grief counseling and support. They did offer it. I didn't accept it. I didn't take it. I believe very much in God, and He is my grief support. And I've talked with a lot of other people, and I had good family support and friends in the community, you know, put themselves out for me. Some friends even paid for me to talk with a lawyer, whether I hired him or not. Well, you couldn't get a lawyer to even take the case in the province of New Brunswick. But at least it was nice to have someone to just sit down and talk with, because the day that I went in to speak with him, my anxiety was on the top of the hill. Like, I didn't know what was going on, what was going to happen, you know, financial status, what was going to work, what wasn't, you know, one person tell you yes and tell you, like, the day of the 29th, that morning, some people were here, and I can't tell you if it was WorkSafe or not. I can't tell you. There was people coming and going. But they said, Rayma, don't worry about anything financially. We're going to look after you. You're going to be looked after just fine. And I can't tell you exactly who that was, but there was 2 men. And, you know, I mean, that's been a while ago. But anyway, that didn't happen. WorkSafe didn't look after me at all. And if I hadn't pushed for a clause that the lawyer showed me was in their agreement for work, I wouldn't have even got 60% of his pay for 1 year. And because they turned me down, and I appealed it. And finally they did give it to me because they said, yes, the clause was there. So they did finally give me 60%. It was like 18,000 or something like that. And they, you know, they held his pay. His pay should have went in that morning, Thursday morning, the 29th, and they held his pay, for a week or 2 weeks. His last week's work of, you know, whatever. They held his check. They wouldn't let me have it. And it was a struggle. It was very, very hard on the head trying to figure it all out, but what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Because we lived like everybody else from day to day, paycheck to paycheck. You know,
Yeah.
you paid your bills and we weren't behind on anything, but we still had a mortgage to pay and we had been there 5 years left on the house mortgage and we had, you know, credit card bills and everything else. And it's like, how am I going to manage this on my own, alone? But
So who's been there to provide the most support for you?
my God
Hmm?
has provided the support. When I needed to know what to do, I mean, I've always been very independent and learned to do a lot of things that a lot of women would ask a man to do. Well, I've learned to do them myself, either to help out or just because I had no one else to ask. And when I needed to do some things and was so beside myself trying to decide, I would take it in prayer and I would go to bed and dream about what I was supposed to do the next day. Jim had 2 half tons. One was a plow truck. One was just a regular half ton. And they were, you know, in good shape, whatever. But I don't need 2 trucks. So I was going to keep the plow truck so I could plow our yard in the winter. And I felt that I could do that myself. But thinking about it, setting all summer and paying for insurance on it until you really needed it, then that was not going to be a smart idea. So it was like, what am I going to do? So I dreamt about getting a bigger lawnmower. We had a John Deere ride-on, and to get a bigger lawnmower and put a snowblower on the front of it, and then I could snowblow my own yard. And I got up the next morning with the peacefulest feeling and knowing that I knew what I was going to do, and I give the Lord the credit to let me dream that, to let me know, to work it out. I give him the glory for that. He's my support. But I do have, Jim's family is very supportive, and my family is supportive.
What comment what comment would you want to make to anyone listening to your story today relative to workplace accidents? Did you and Jimmy ever talk about that, about the possibility that, obviously he hurt his hand. Did you ever
Yes.
talk about the possibility of a workplace accident?
No, not so much a workplace accident, but every once in a while he would say to me, Rayma, if anything ever happens to me, I don't know whether you'll be able to run this place by yourself or not. And if you do, don't let someone take advantage of you. If you meet somebody, don't let them take advantage of you of what we've built together. He would say that to me many times. And of course my reaction was, don't talk so foolish. You're not going first. I am. So, but no, we didn't really talk about work, about that. Sometimes he often, not often, but once in a while, if there was a safety issue going on at work, he would talk to me about what was going on or something, or not so much safety with his crew, but maybe seeing something on another crew and saying, they didn't even have a harness on, and of course I would say to him, when you're crawling across those bridges, cleaning those in the spring of the year and cleaning the gutters, you make sure you've got your safety belt on, buddy. I don't care if you can swim. But, other than that, no, we didn't really talk about that so much. He was always bringing home one of the jokes that the boys had told him. So we had a good laugh with that. Yeah.
Obviously, you have a lot of sad memories.
Yes.
Why don't you share, as we finish off the podcast, one of the best memories you have when you think of Jimmy? What's the one thing that sort of always puts a smile on your face? Take a bit to think about it.
Yeah. Yes, there's quite a few. I often do think of him sitting on the couch and, trying to tell me some story about something that happened that day and then him just breaking out laughing and just laughing so hard that he could hardly tell me. Yeah. I often think of that.
Okay. Well, look, Rayma, thank you very much. for agreeing to be on our podcast and sharing your story. I've been in health and safety now for 32 years. And for a lot of people, they don't think it can happen to them. They don't realize that it can. They don't think it will. And they don't seem to realize in a lot of cases that when they do happen, it affects everyone. And it's not only the person that's injured or killed, it's everyone.
Oh,
And your story is a great example of how it does affect everyone. And thank you very much for sharing that with us today.
you're very welcome.
That's today's podcast, folks. We hope you'll listen to the podcast, and we hope you'll share it with others as well. Share it, again, not only with your coworkers, but also encourage them to share it with their families. Workplace accidents affect everyone. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.